Today we are setting up electric fencing to rotate our goats around some of our land, and I'm going to show you exactly how we do that. But before we do, make sure to subscribe to my channel for more homesteading content. There are many great reasons to use electric fencing. And the first thought that I think anyone might think of in terms of electric shock to an animal is, oh my gosh, that sounds terrible. I don't want to hurt my animals. But what you have to understand about an electric fence is the shock is very minimal and very quick. And so all it is training the animal once, usually just one time is all they need, sometimes two times, to not get close to the fence. The shock isn't on all the time. It usually has some sort of pattern, like every 5 seconds. And so it's using minimal energy and again, just training the animal to not get close to the fence. And they work really well. Many of the benefits of using an electric fence is one, it's much cheaper and faster than putting up a permanent fence if you're looking to enclose a herd or some livestock. It's going to be very effective at keeping your herd or livestock in and also keeping predators out. There are notorious stories of goats being escape artists and getting out of their fencing if you were to use chicken wire or something that you think is heavy duty and it not be heavy duty enough, and they push up against it and find their way out. We did choose to build a permanent fenced-in structure so that we could have it in case we weren't able to move electric fencing around, because there is this concept of rotational grazing, which we'll cover in another video, that is key to natural parasite management and extremely regenerative and healthy for the land. Electric fencing is also pretty easy to find. It can be a little intimidating at first to figure out what kind you need or all the parts and pieces, but usually you can find what you need at either a big box store like Tractor Supply. We ordered all of our materials through Premier One Fencing and found their customer support to be really helpful. There were plenty of questions that we had in terms of what materials we needed. And even when we first got a bunch of our materials, there were some things that we thought that we were missing, and they were awesome at identifying exactly what we needed and giving us everything we needed for this very simple setup. So let's dive into the fencing itself. Obviously, you're going to need an electrical outlet to plug in your electric fencing to, and the first step is unwinding the electrical fencing in order to lay out where you want to make your paddock. This is actually a very important step in terms of unraveling, because you don't want to get a tangled up mess of your fencing, and so pay important attention to the directions that's going to show you how to, instead of rolling it up, you're going to be collecting these rods here and kind of holding them up in like a blanket folding fashion, and then letting them go as you make your space. It's also at this point where if there are any tangles, you want to go through once it's laid out and make sure that everything is nice and straight. In terms of type of electric fencing, there's many different types. There are some that are just a matter of 3 strands. There's some that have different weaves. We chose this one because it seemed like it was the most consistent and it was recommended for goats. But it's just an even weave from top to bottom. It's about 3 feet tall, and it's got these stakes here that we're going to be using to stake into the ground with these little spikes. And then of course we are going to use the back of this fence as one of our sides. When connecting 2 panels of fencing, you're going to find there's this piece here that's going to move the electric shock from one to the other. So you'll put that together there. And the electric fencing does come with rope that you're able to use to tie some of the poles together. We'll also use those ties to connect them to the fence back there. So a couple things to note about this electric fence. First off, if you have really high grasses, you may want to consider mowing around the space where your electric fence will be put, because that could block the electric force and cause some interference. And then something that we've done here, just because this is our specific situation, is we've got this 2-gate entrance to our pasture. And so when we're rotating our paddocks, we're going to use one of these gates to let the goats in and out of. And then when we rotate it to this side, we'll use this other side of the gate. Our electric fence is all set up and ready to turn on. So what we're installing next is the Energizer. And this is what's going to provide electricity to the fence from our electrical outlet. We did screw in a little screw just to hang that on there, so it's pretty convenient and out of the way.
So this line goes to the ground and this line goes to the fence.
So now we're attaching the grounding wire to the metal base there that we use to lock in this pole into position. Now, if you were to use a bigger electric fence, say to go around our whole property, then you would need to install a larger rod deeper into the ground. But this being a portable fence, and with it being very wet in our area, this provides us with enough charge by connecting it just to this metal base here. Once that's connected to the base, we'll go ahead and straighten out this piece here, make it nice and tight. We're going to go ahead and charge it up and show you what it looks like when it is on. You see that green light there, and you might be able to hear a little tick. That green light and that tick is telling you when there's an electric pulse going through this fence. As I mentioned before, it's not constantly electric. I mean, it is connected to the electricity, but the animals, if they were touching this, would get an electric shock at that green light or that tick. But that means that it is on and hot, and you do not want to touch it. We're going to test it now to make sure that the electrical charge is sufficient. So the range that you want to check for is between 2,000 and 9,000. Ours is about 4,200, 41, maybe 5. And you'll also notice that we're making sure nothing is touching the actual wires. This piece here is okay, but everything else is clear. So obviously when it's time to move the goats in, we're just going to unplug it from the socket, move our goats in, turn it on, announce to the whole family that the fence is hot. Our electric fence is complete, and we are going to move our goats out and get them started on a rotation around the property.